This week's episode sponsored for dailygiving.org. Great organization gives out charity on your behalf. I love it. No matter what's going on in my life, I know that every day something was given out on my behalf. I just recently heard from somebody who was looking for something special to do in memory of a loved one. And what they did was they actually joined Daily Giving for them. Now, every day, charity is being giving out in the honor, in the memory of somebody. What an incredible concept that every day there's charity being given out on your behalf, on behalf of someone that you love, someone that you miss. Check them out, dailygiving.org, dailygiving.org. This week's Torah portion is an interesting one. It is the highlight of the Torah, right? The Torah portion is a piece of Torah, and this week's Torah portion is about Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah. So I would consider this the crescendo, the Super Bowl Sunday of Torah portions. But what's fascinating is the name of the Torah portion. Remember, everything in Judaism has meaning. The opening line of the Torah portion references a man named Yisro, Jethro. And the Torah portion is named Yitro, after him. Who is this man? He was the father-in-law of Moses. Now, let me ask you a question. If you get to name the Torah portion after anybody, right? If whoever gets the naming rights of this week, right? The week, the top of the hill, if you will, literally, Mount Sinai. Who do you think deserves naming rights? Wouldn't you think it was Moses? Shows up, goes 10 rounds against Pharaoh, walks the Jews out, prepares them for the big day, right? He's the one. It's called actually Toras Moshe. Moshe is actually connected to the name. You'd think that the name of the portion should go after Moshe. Wouldn't that be right? You know what? You know who gets it? His father-in-law, who, by the way, was in a different country during the whole plague thing and just showed up 5 minutes ago. Can you imagine? Can you imagine inviting the fan who just became a Chiefs fan 5 minutes ago down to hold the trophy over his head if the Chiefs win? Like, really? How about the guy who built the team when it was terrible and stuck with it the whole way through? Why is it called Yisro for? So I heard a beautiful idea. God was clearly teaching us a lesson. Moshe was cool. But God did this for a reason. This is the idea that I heard. You know, sometimes in life, we look at the world through physical eyes. Physical eyes are very much related to accomplishments. How much you have, how much you've accomplished, how far you are. More points that you've scored. It doesn't matter how much you wanted it. It matters how many points you have in this world. It's a bottom line society that we live in. I don't care how good you are in school. What'd you get on your LSATs? That's how you get into law school. We live physically in a very results-driven world. But spirituality is not like that. God doesn't look at the world of results. Results are really just indications of something much deeper, which is your mind, your mentality, your interests. Someone that is able to do something with a mentality of desire to connect to God is so much more qualitatively accepted by God than someone who just does it because they have no choice. Effort, interest, desire. These are the worlds of the spiritual. Who is Yisro? Yisro was one of the most important men of the time. He was one of Pharaoh's advisors. He was, as they say, the Kohen Midyan. He was the Pope, the high priest, the chief theological person of one of the major countries of antiquity. He had an incredible amount of honor afforded to him and wealth. But he was a man of searching for truth. And at some point in his life, he realized that the truth that he saw lied away from the idol worship that was going on back then. And he had to make a tough call. He had to walk away from a life filled with physical pleasure and honor against idol worship because he saw that it wasn't true. There was one God. He didn't become Jewish. He didn't go into a new community. He just became abandoned by his old community. In fact, when Moses showed up, if you remember the story, he saw the daughters of Israel being harassed by the shepherds because everyone harassed them. He was outcasted, not for 5 minutes, for the majority of his adult life. He was an outcast because he pursued truth. And when God took the Jews out of Egypt and split the sea, he saw what he was waiting for. He showed up to the desert. He wasn't one of them. He wasn't at the head of any line. He didn't speak it. He didn't know it. He didn't have the history, the tradition. I bet you people saw him and said, he's got protexia. He's not really one of us. He just happens to be Moses' father-in-law. And God says, you don't know who this guy is. Because in my book, I look at something much deeper. I look at how badly you want it. There are people out there that are striving so hard for me, God says, and maybe on the outside they don't look like they have it all together, but I see their hearts. There are people that are doing the best that they can with whatever they have. I see their hearts. Kadosh Baruch Hu is someone who is able to see the hearts of man. He sees what you really want. The world doesn't, but God does. And on this day, the crescendo of the Torah portions, the top of the apex, God turns to the man that has spent his entire life being outcasted. The man who now feels, even in the new nation, like an outcast, and says, who cares what anybody sees of you? I see you. I see your heart. In life, our job is to give God not just our hands, it's to give him our heart. And when we strive to do what's right, when we yearn to be better, maybe we are successful, maybe we're not, but we have to know in our core that at the end of the day, God sees it and he loves it. He loves what's on the inside. As it says in the Talmud, Rachmana deliba bai. You know what God wants more than anything else? He wants our heart.